right, y'all. This is another episode of the Public Therapy Podcast with your host, Chris.
Right.
All right, y'all. We have another episode with y'all today. So today's episode, we are pleased to have with us Reverend Dr. Marisha Stewart, whom is the host of Lioness Queen Podcast. How are you doing, ma'am?
I am great. How are you?
We are good. Oh, I'm good. How are you doing, Raven?
I'm doing good.
Doing good. Let's see, Mike Street. So we have the Lioness Queen with us today. So how do you want to start addressing today? Because I know you have a PhD, so you're Dr. Stewart, or you want us to talk to you as Reverend Stewart? What would you prefer, Marisha?
I'm supposed to. So sometimes I'm, at church I'm at Reverend, at school I'm Doctor, at work I'm Doctor, and friends sometimes I just want to be my nickname, Ree. Right?
Ree? Okay.
I have a lot of names. Marisha is fine. Reverend Dr. Marisha, I'm good.
Okay. Whatever. I'll just call you whatever comes to mind at the time.
That's fine.
All right. So before we start diving into today's topic, let's talk about you a little bit. Give us, our audience, a little bit about your background.
So it's so interesting. I am a product of something that my mom, I would say she laid some seeds in me really early. And that is, I could be anything that I ever wanted to be, if I made it up in my mind to do it. And so after I finished graduating from high school, almost 30 years ago, I don't want to say almost 30 years ago. I might not look at
We're not far behind.
I'm really close to 30 years ago. I wanted to go to college, but I always wanted to be a pediatrician. And I did terrible in chemistry, like chemistry 101, like the first science class you would take when you in college. It was terrible.
Yeah. I
kind of knew that dream wouldn't manifest itself. And so I was like, maybe I'll just do general studies, because as a young person, you kind of don't know what you want to do. And so I literally just did general studies. And at the time I had pursued my manicuring license. My dad was like, you need to stop and you need to continue with school. I'm like, well, I love to do nails, Dad. At the time I had became a professional clown. And then still pursuing school, I had became very fluent in sign language.
Yeah, I got that in common.
To the point where I learned at church, and then I started taking classes. And then I thought I wanted to be a speech pathologist and didn't get accepted into grad school. And so at that point I was like, okay, God, I don't know what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I just became a full-time interpreter at different colleges, freelancing. And then somebody encouraged me to go back to school. And I was like, I don't know for what. I've tried my dream and it just didn't, it just didn't work out. The door closed. Right. She was like, I don't care what it was. I just need you to do it. And the time frame that she encouraged me to do it was in, I would say, a time frame of, I was in my lowest point, where my ex-husband had disclosed he didn't know if he wanted to be married. And we just got married at that point. And so I decided to go back to school. My mom's a pastor. I'm a PK. And literally, I was like, I could do counseling. And so I went to Gallaudet University and got a degree in school counseling. And then I love grad school. Like I've always been a C student, like C's get degrees, right? Yeah. I love grad school, and grad school for me, it just opened me up to, that was the first time I ever became a straight A student. And, and I loved it so much. I went and got my doctorate in human services with a specialization in counseling. And so I'm a full-time school counselor, part-time adjunct professor at a local community college. I'm a licensed minister at my church. And then I have a podcast that I just started earlier this year. Where women like myself use their faith to overcome emotional trauma from divorce.
Okay. So we have that in common with being a preacher's kid. I'm a PK kid as well. So it sounds like you basically broke that stereotype when it comes to a preacher's kid or PK, because people always look at the preacher kid like the bad kids in the church. So
yeah, that wasn't me. I did my stuff though, like you know, I did
Just
my
like
stuff,
everybody else. Yep.
stuff that people ain't know, but I wouldn't say I was that typical PK.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh. So, yeah, so I was looking at you have a website. I forgot, what is it? Is it Lioness Queen?
I am the Lioness Queen.
I am the lionessqueen.com. So, and I saw that you wrote down, or you have on there in a couple of places, I am residue free, that scripture from John. So what, can you kind of explain what that means to you, or how you came up with that? Not that you came up with the scripture, but why did you pick that particular scripture?
So being residue free is all about being free from an event that happened to you, whether it was traumatic, whether it was devastating, whatever the case, whatever negative experience that you, sometimes we go through in life, there is residue from it, right? And so as a result from my divorce, I built up residue. When somebody rejection, the spirit of rejection itself can cause residue to build up, bitterness, you're angry, different emotions and different feelings build up to the point where you look more behind than you do ahead.
Okay.
And so being residue free is all about getting rid of the residue from your life so that you can walk into the destiny that God has placed you to go towards.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's my first, it sounds bad coming from a PK, but that was my first time even hearing that. I'm residue free.
Yeah, so that's something that I would say God gave me, but I just realized, especially from divorce or broken relationships, typically you hold on to whatever happened, and typically we carry it to our next relationship, and sometimes you don't know why you have this new person, but you don't know why, because you're still stuck to what somebody did to you or said to you, or even going back further from childhood. You just don't realize how much residue can build up over the point in time, and then you take it into a new relationship, and then you don't realize why you're having issues, but the issue is the residue.
Right. Mm-hmm. So with the residue, let's talk about coronavirus a little bit. Did the coronavirus or the pandemic, did that kind of leave some residue on your life? Do you think, or did it cause some residue buildup?
No. So for me, it's so interesting because the lady just asked me a question about that, and really for me, it didn't. I just feel like God was like, "Hey, you guys need to slow down. You need to pause, take a break, pump your brakes a little bit," and that's just kind of how I felt. I know it did create a lot of anxiety and fear for people. It is real. You know what I mean? And people are dying from it. But for me personally, it's just my walk. I just feel like I'm covered no matter what. If I get it, if I don't get it, and even in my death, I'm still covered.
Right. That's what we were kind of talking about that. I feel like I talk about this like the past few episodes we did, is how oddly it sounds, but I appreciate this whole pandemic because it allowed you to kind of take a couple steps back and slow things down, just like you said, and focus on yourself and focus on other things that you had to do. So that's pretty cool. Did you start your podcast? You started your podcast before the pandemic though, right?
I started right before the pandemic. So I was trying to balance working because I'm a full-time school counselor. I'm in a high school. And the craziest part is we literally had a parent come in our building to give us a note for their child to say their child was out sick and they were getting tested for COVID. And so we're like, you could have made a phone call. That couldn't have been an email. So it sent literally my whole building. I mean, they just went crazy. They went crazy. And if the staff went crazy, it sent the kids on edge. It was pandemonium. You know what I mean? And that happened right before, I would say, we shut down. Right before our state shut down, we had this like craziness going on. And even with my counselors, like even in my office, like my counselors were just in disarray. And it's just amazing how certain things that can come up in your life and test your faith, and you don't realize. It's like, do I really have that foundation? Do I really believe what I believe? You get to that point, and I think Corona kind of has done this for a lot of people. It's testing, do I really believe what I believe?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and where are you at again?
I'm in Maryland.
Maryland. Did Maryland get hit pretty? Well, y'all did get hit hard, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially being on the East Coast.
Yeah, Maryland, DC, and Virginia, our whole little region.
The whole area. Yeah, we're originally from Texas, and Texas is apparently doing pretty bad right now. Texas and Florida going neck and neck. So, all right. So let's talk about the meat and potatoes now of the podcast. Let's talk about you a little bit. So when you hit me up on Facebook, you said you wanted to come on and talk about some emotional trauma that you have to deal with when it came to your divorce that you spoke with briefly earlier. So you want to talk to our audience about that a little bit? Or take a deep dive into that?
That's fine.
Okay. So let's do it. I guess you can tell us about your emotional trauma then, or how you got to that place.
To that point. So I was with my ex-husband for 24 years, and the interesting piece is it was such a shocker. And so you would think, for me, I would think somebody who, we always had issues, things were always on the up and down, but you didn't see that in our marriage. We rarely argued. We rarely had disagreements. It just caught me so off guard. I literally could say, I could tell my ex was being distant from me, but not knowing what it was, because he always masked it very well. But somebody literally just saying, I never wanted to be married. I'm unhappy. I thought marriage would make me happy, and I really never wanted to be married. We dated 9 years before we got married, which was a long time, but he said it was to finish school. But honestly, hindsight, looking back, I think literally he never wanted to be married. And so once those words came out of his mouth, it was just a blow for me. This is the only person I had been with since 17. And it took me in a dive. And so although I'm a PK, although I love the Lord, I believe the Lord, it just took me into a dark space. And so anxiety, I put on the mask in front of people, but when I was home, I had my own demons to deal with, especially in my mind. And so with the negative and irrational thoughts, the thoughts of suicide, just the sleepless nights, just the anxiety of just everything of what I was going through at the moment. I only have one child, and I know some people ask me, well, how did you financially, kind of come to grips with handling that piece? And that's when I went back to school, because it came up before. And so I said to myself, if it ever came up again, I wanted to be financially prepared. Right. So that's what I said in the back of my mind. But we were doing so well, what I thought. We had a townhouse. We moved out of a townhouse. We moved into almost a 5,000 square foot home. I thought things were on the up and up, and just for somebody to come out and say, I never wanted to be married, and literally never wanted counseling. He didn't want to talk about counseling. He didn't want to talk to our pastors about anything. It just caught everybody. It caught his parents. It caught his mom off guard. It just caught everybody off guard. Like, even his mother literally was so upset with him, to the point where she's like, your father did the same thing to me, so why would you do the same thing to her? And so it was so challenging to deal with, even though I had my faith. And so my mind just went down this spiral, even things. And I see how it's interesting how in either side, women or men, your mind goes to a place where when I hurt, I want to hurt you. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter in what way. So I can see how when you've been rejected or hurt, you want to hurt the other person in some type of way, or even hurt something that they have or something that they own. Like I literally can see, I see how people do that, because it's so easy to get in that space when you have been, which you feel violated, and someone have just literally sucked the life out of you, and you feel like why did you do that, but not really realizing the purpose in it all.
Yeah. So how did you get through that trauma? So you said you said all the trauma, you said all the things that it caused, but how'd you get through that?
So I was set. I mean, it was my faith, but the first thing for me was realizing how much God loved me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel loved. I felt like we were really great roommates. And so the interesting thing is, I'm remarried now, and my relationship now is so different. It's so many. I'm experiencing so many things I never experienced before. So I literally feel like my first marriage, we were just roommates. Mm. And so for me, I didn't feel loved. And so the first piece God really had to work with me on is appreciating his love for me. And that was kind of the beginning of me healing. I first had to understand how much he loved me. And that was enough, right? Right? It wasn't about needing someone else to love me. It was only about God's love for me. And then that transitioned to, well, how do I love me? And then how do I know who I am? Because that is a big issue too, with being rejected, especially when you've been married to someone for whatever period of time. You lose who you are. You know, I've always been Mrs. Right. Right. That was my last name. I've always been that person. But it's like, man, I mean, even before we were married, this is what Reagan will understand. This is what girls do. We'll write our first name and then write their last name. That's what girls do, right? So I had did that for the longest time. And so now it's like, well, who am I? And then checking the box of being single felt weird, because I've always been with this person. Right. And so figuring out who I was, learning who I was, it was all about learning how to water myself. I needed to know what that felt like for myself, so that when it was time for me to open myself up again, I need to know what watering myself looks like, so that when somebody wants to try to water me, I know if the water is good or not.
Okay.
Yes. You understand? Right. Like, I need to know that. I think that's the issue with a lot of young women. They just don't know how to water themselves. They've been watered in so many different ways, but do not know really what genuine water is. And that's, pure unconditional love.
All right. So you said, and going back to your the previous marriage, so y'all dated for 9 years from the age of 17, and then you said you were married for 24 years after that?
No, I said we were together for 24 years.
Oh, together. So that 9 years was included. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, so I don't know if I read this right, but did you, as soon as, like, around the same time that you became a minister, was that the same time you were going through a divorce as well? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I did read that right. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there was trauma behind that as well, because.
Well, it's interesting. So, okay. Cause so my initial message, the title was "The Cup Was Necessary."
Okay.
And so what God had to help me with was, Jesus had a cup too. And there was a time in the garden that he was trying to turn the cup down. Right. Okay. And so he didn't know if he could go to the cross or not, but the cup was necessary. He had to do it. That was his purpose. And so God had to relate that to me. This closed door is necessary for where I'm taking you. And so I need you to be okay with this decision. I need you to be okay with this uncertain place, this unknown space you're in, because I got you. I'm going to take care of you. And this closed door will be a blessing for you if you trust me. But the cup is necessary. I need you to accept this cup.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's really how God had to help me process everything during that time of my initial message. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. You got some?
Just listening.
You can tell who's the quiet one on the podcast. Okay. So, okay. So, and that's pretty basically, not basically, but I listened to a couple of your episodes on the Lioness podcast. But it sounds like you basically talk about those type of situations, right? Trying to help women. It's like a women empowerment type podcast thing. Okay. So you want to tell us a little bit about that, about your podcast?
So, man, I really enjoy. I never knew. One, I didn't really know too much about podcasts, and I was like, man, okay, I'm gonna do it. Yeah. And I really enjoy it. I truly believe transparency is the best tool to helping people, right? Like, why put on a mask? Why put on this front? Like, you don't think this way. You haven't said something slick out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. You haven't done certain things. Like, why hide when we're not perfect, right? Like, we aren't perfect. And so I truly believe that it is okay to be transparent with women, and it's okay for women to understand how they're feeling, what they're feeling, and it's okay to have those feelings. But in the same regard, it's not okay to stay in that place. Mm. And so I think that is where we get stuck. We get stuck being bitter. We get stuck in a place of what men have done to us. And so it's easy for us to say, oh, all men are dogs. It's easy for us to say, oh, it's no good men out there. All the good ones are taken. It's easy for us to say that. And it's so interesting. My husband now, he said to me, he said, you know what? I didn't think there were any good women out there. And I said, men say that?
Is he previously married too?
He's never been married.
Okay.
And so I literally went, that's the Lord right there. I love the Lord. So I literally went for somebody who never wanted to be married to somebody who always wanted to be married and never was. So he never literally felt like he found the one, you know what I mean, worthy enough. And so in his mind, he felt like, I don't think there are any good ones out there. But that is based on residue. That is based on our experiences from our past that really keep us in a certain position, and we're not open to seeing new things and new people.
Okay. I love that residue thing. That might be the name of the podcast. That might be the name of this episode. So
it controls so much, you know what I mean? I mean, so even if you think about, it can just be related to so many different, even if you think about Black Lives Matter, it's all about residue. And so oftentimes we like to connect it back to slavery, right? We want to connect it back to residue when I'm okay. I understand, but I don't know what slavery is like.
Right.
My mama don't know. My grandmama don't. I mean, and so I can't base it off of. I can base it off of in my generation what I've seen, right? But again, that residue, we will keep carrying that residue until when will we fully get rid of it and really fully attack issues that are happening now and not connect it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about a sharecropper. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't raised around it, that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I got to base things off of what I see and what I'm experiencing now in my generation. You see what I'm saying? And so that's the thing. We always want to go back to stuff. No, leave it there. The past is the past. Let's work on the current stuff that's going on that we see now.
Right. I just, and this isn't going against anything that you just said, but I had a podcast that dropped yesterday with my friend Chris Gardner, and he put something in perspective with me that I thought that was so interesting. So he said that we're just one generation deep, or two, I think he said 2 generations deep from slavery, actually. So we are the first ones, like even like us right here on this podcast, the first ones that's like, well, I guess no, our parents would be the first ones that had the chance to go to schools that weren't integrated, and then our grandparents and beyond, they were in segregated schools and stuff. You know how old everyone is, but most people listen to the podcast are probably their grandparents were probably the last ones that had to deal with segregation. And then we're the now we, like you just said, we got to look forward now. Okay. Not saying that ignore all that and all that stuff doesn't matter now. How can we move forward? What can we do to better ourselves and stuff? So I enjoyed that podcast that came out.
And based on stuff that's happening now, like let's be relevant. You know what I mean? Because that is, when you put things in perspective, it's all about what's relevant now and how can we. The goal is to move forward, but oftentimes we always want to push the issue of what happened in the past versus, moving forward. So like I did a tribute to John Lewis, and I was like, this man didn't know my name. This man doesn't know where I'm from, what I do, but this man decided to sacrifice for me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there will be people in this generation who will be called. I feel like that's a calling. Like he felt it was a call for him. And so there will be people who will be called to do certain work,
right.
To push the movement forward or to push, so those seeds can harvest. We all have a part, but everybody's part can look different. You know what I mean?
Right.
But again, we can't hold on to the past. We have to move forward.
Yep. And that's the same. It seems like that's the same message that you're giving to the people on your podcast too, about moving forward. Because like you said, people do get stuck in that rut and they don't want to move forward. But
yeah, it's really, so for example, this is my residue free. And this is something that I have to renew my mind with all the time. So my ex-husband is engaged. But he said to me he never wanted to be married, right?
Yeah.
I am remarried. But again, it's all about mindset. So where does my mind go? I'm happily remarried. But where does my mind go? My mind goes to, he said he never wanted to be married. So what was wrong with me? That's where my mind goes.
That's what it looks like.
That is where it goes.
That's what it looks like in your head.
That's what it looks like in my head, because I'm the lesson. I'm the object lesson. It happened to me. Yeah. So I'm putting it all, attaching it all to me, even though it wasn't about me. So me being residue free literally is every prayer that I made, every time I fasted, every journal I wrote in over the years, everything that I asked God for in him, she will reap the benefit. That's residue free.
That is some residue. That is something. Okay.
So that is what I continue to renew my mind with, because in the same regard, whatever was going on, he was in a space, right? We all get in a space. And when my girlfriend said to me, everybody has an option to change their mind. And I was like, what? She said, everybody has an option. Everybody does. Everybody can change their mind and say, no, I don't want to do this. Yeah. And it really was a dagger, but it's so true. And if I don't allow that, then I'm being manipulated, right? Because I can't let you have free will if you feel you want to change your mind. And so I want the best for him. That's the father of, my son, our son, you know what I mean? I want the best for him. And so that is all about the process of getting rid of those, I would say, layers like an onion, and being totally residue free, that their relationship was better than our marriage, that he treats her children better than he treated our son. Like, that is totally all about being residue free.
Yeah. So going back to your divorce a little bit, who'd you have in your circle? And how was your circle as far as like your support group?
So I had a great circle. I had a great circle, but my circle didn't know all my demons. That's the piece we had. Like, I wanted to, I wanted to look in a way like I had myself together. I'm believing God. You know what I mean? But inside it was, I was trying to do it on my own, and I shouldn't have. However, my parents were very supportive. It got to a point where my dad sometimes would he wouldn't call it dates, but he's like, let's go out and get something to eat. you know, and so he took me out more often. When me and my son took us out more often. My mom was very supportive. My church family, my pastors, extremely supportive. My friends were very supportive. I really had a really strong group, but again, I didn't let everyone know my demons. So like even when, you know, I experienced thoughts of suicide, like I literally experienced, you know, had thoughts of driving off of the road at times. I had only told one person.
Okay.
So that's not something everybody knew at the time. It's something that I talk about openly now because I feel more comfortable about it now, but that's only because God gave me an awakening experience of why I was experiencing it so heavy.
Yeah. I mean, so what made you not want to drive off the road? You just came to your senses at the right time?
So no, so God, I had an awakening experience. So God said to me, why do you think this is? And I was like, I just don't know. My purpose in it was I wanted to hurt my ex. So I literally wanted to leave a note. Okay. I literally wanted to leave a note for him. And the note, I wanted it to say, I wanted, you know, your son to hate you the rest of your life because I did it because of you. Like I literally had that thing all kind of planned out.
Yeah.
And from a counselor perspective, it's really dangerous because if you kind of have a plan, then you're more in tune to do it.
Right.
However, there was one day that God asked me the question, why do you think this is? Because I was praying for God to remove those thoughts from me. And he said to me, the reason why it's intense in this way is because of the call that's on your life. And the call that there will be many women that you will help just like you work through this traumatic experience. And so that is when I had, this is why. Okay, I got it. And so once I had that in my head, I was like, oh, so really he was hurting me, but really he wanted to stop what I was going to be doing. So he wanted to stop Lioness Queen from ever coming forth. That is really why he wanted to stop me from moving forward.
Right. So the reason why I asked about the question about your circle is because I've seen, you know how you have certain friends that hype you up. So they'll be like, let's say you're going through a divorce, they'll be like, yeah, forget him. Like he's nothing anyway. He's trash. Like you see that all the time, and I don't find that productive. You know, how you have that one friend that's always like on your side, but it sounds like you have people that's trying to push you in the right direction. Like, just let's get through this.
Yeah, I have very positive. I have a very positive circle, but I've always had that, and I don't know why that is. I've always had a very positive circle. Of course, you're gonna have friends that sometimes come and go. That's natural. You have some that's temporary and some that you'll have a lifetime. But in the same regard, I've always had a really positive circle. But then I've had, you know, some who challenged me, you know, in a certain regard. Like my girlfriend was like, well, you know, everybody can change their mind. I'm like, girl, you know, what? Well, we're married. Okay. But he made a vow. Okay. But in the same regard, they have the free will. That's what God gave all of us, a free will to change their mind. And so, you know, it's like, okay. Yeah. And so that's good too. You want people who will be supportive, and you want people who will also challenge some things as well. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think when you have that balance of both, it really can kind of help put you in the right direction where you're supposed to be.
Okay. And how'd your son take it? How old was your son whenever y'all were going through this?
So my son was 13.
Oh, okay. He's in that molding stage.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily molding, but he knows exactly what's going on.
Well, the interesting thing, when we separated, I had told him, I was like, look, you know, sometimes your dad's going to get you. Sometimes, you know, I'm not sure how that was going to look. And he was like, I'm not staying with him. The thing about it is my ex-husband spent more time out than in. And so there was something that was pulling him out of the home.
Okay, that's what okay, you meant like out and about type thing.
Out and versus being home.
Okay. I don't like you
I'm
mean
out than being home.
it sound like jail or prison.
Yeah, so when we separated, it really didn't feel that much different. Which is weird. But I mean he came home every night, but you know what I mean? He often he wasn't physically there and often he wasn't emotionally there. And so for me and my son, it wasn't that much of a difference. It was definitely different for me because I wasn't Mrs. that, you know what I mean? But so for my son, I think that's the other piece of the trauma is how do I not let my traumatic experience impact my son negatively? How do I, it's definitely hard to hide your hurt. It's hard to hide it from children because children, I would say, are really good at discerning what people are going through, which is people are being real or not. And so my son definitely saw my hurt. He saw my pain. He saw my tears.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same regard, you know, trying to hide that from him and not allowing him to internalize so much. But again, children create their own perspectives. You know, the biggest one I wanted him to learn was his dad was doing what he knew. You know, his father did it to his father did it to his mother. And so it was just he just repeated the cycle.
Right.
You know, it wasn't, I mean, typically we don't read books, how to be a better husband, how to be a better wife, how to be a better dad, how to be a better mom. We don't do that. We do what we know. Mm-hmm. Or we try not to fall into what our parents did. You know, it's like you become on a certain spectrum. And so for him, he basically did the same thing that his dad did to his mother. And that's one of the reasons why his family was so outraged because they're like, your mom was hurt, you know, and then you repeated the cycle. And so that's what I wanted my son to have that lens, more empathetic, that his dad just did what he knew.
Yeah. How's his relationship with his dad now?
I would say it's better. His dad has still been in his life. You know what I mean? Like I cannot lie. We've co-parented very well. His dad is always, you know how you do the every 2 week thing. It's just not something his dad did. But again, his dad wasn't really there anyway.
Yeah, in the first place.
But in the same regard, he didn't have his dad in his life anyway. So he doesn't really know how to be a dad. You know, he didn't even have anybody in his family circle even to see, you know what I mean? But I would say their relationship is better now, but my son still has stuff. I would say in his subconscious, that's never really come out. That one day that there will be a man-to-man conversation, you know.
Yeah. How old is your son now?
He's 18.
Okay. Yeah. So in the next few years, they'll probably have that conversation one day.
Yeah. And I hope he does, right? Like I really want him to be able to express himself. I truly believe the relationship is necessary. Yeah. It is so necessary, but it's necessary for my son, but it's also necessary for his dad because I could tell he really missed being around his son. You know, sometimes you don't know it's gone till it's gone. Mm-hmm. He does miss it. He just didn't know how. He just didn't know how to express it. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. So on the Public Therapy Podcast, I don't know if you listen to any of the episodes, but we always like to ask our hosts what is something therapeutic that they love to do on a day-to-day basis.
Ooh, music is my thing.
That's your escape?
Yes. I'm gonna tell you. So my husband's a musician, and so I love music, but he really loves music, and he loves it loud. Right.
Loud.
Loud. Loud.
Okay.
Loud. And so it's so interesting you mentioned that, because the one song that really helped, it was the beginning of me healing, was a song by Anthony Evans. He Loves Me. And it's all about God loving me. That's Tony Evans' son. I don't know if you've heard of Tony Evans.
Yes.
But that song ministered so much to me. I think music is so therapeutic. It can take you into another dimension and another realm. Sometimes words can't do it. And sometimes you need to hear something and kind of let it get in deep and resonate within. And music is it for me. I absolutely love music.
Okay. You're a music head too, ain't you? Yes, she is. We ain't gonna talk about the music she like to listen to. Now she listens to a lot. You listen to a lot of gospel, but you throw on some random stuff one day. It's like before this episode, as a matter of fact, she was in a different zone today. So,
but it's so therapeutic. I do the first day in one of my classes. That's an exercise that I do. Is I ask my students, list 3 songs that either inspire, encourage, take you to another place, make you happy, make you think about a happy moment. And it's so interesting how when my students, when it's their turn to talk about it, their face changes.
Okay.
Like either they remember a moment, they remember it, and remembering a moment in time is like, man, you can almost see it through their eyes, and so that's the one thing that I do. I love about the power of music, just how inspirational it can be to help, to be therapeutic.
Right. So my therapeutic thing is the gym, right? So, but the gym and the music plays hand in hand, because it's certain music that I have to listen to get in the zone to be able to do what I need to do in the gym. So that's music is. Imagine a world without music. Probably wouldn't even be a world, would it?
It just would not.
You look frustrated.
That would just. So it's like, I work with. I used to be a sign language interpreter.
Yeah.
And I literally, I love doing it at church. So I love signing music.
Okay.
But it's like, man, if we were deaf, we wouldn't be able to hear it. And so with sign language, it gives them, just like we have to, when we hear it, it goes into our spirit. They have to see it and it goes in. And so their hearing is through their eyes, you see. And so when it goes in a way, it goes in just like how we hear it. It's just a different way of hearing. But I'm telling you, music is so powerful, even when it comes to people who are deaf.
Right. I never even thought about that. I've never thought about that, because you have people that sign music at like concerts and, like you said, at church and stuff. And I never thought about how did.
Have you ever seen that person really get into it?
I have, and I never thought about it though until right now.
They hear through their eyes, and visually they can really feel it. And then a lot of them feel through, the drums, the strong beats. They can feel their chest vibrate, and they can really feel. But yeah, that's how they hear, and it gets in the same way.
Yeah, they came out with a backpack for, I think it was motivated for deaf people, where it gives you, like, you can feel the rhythm in the music and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Did you know that? Or have you ever thought about that? Because I know you kind of did the sign language thing for a little bit.
I've seen people, and it's crazy because I actually pay a lot of attention to the interpreters at church, especially when it's a song. I've literally caught myself like just staring at the interpreter, and I'm like, wow, it's crazy how, they relate just how we relate, just through their eyes.
Yeah.
And they can tell whether or not you're boring or not. So just how, yeah, they could tell that too. It's all in the delivery.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So your podcast, so you got the Lioness Queen podcast. So you talked to us about that a little bit. Where can people go to your podcast to find it?
So I'm on Facebook as either Marisha Stewart or Lioness Queen.
Okay.
Also on Instagram, Reverend Dr. Lioness Queen. And then my website, IamTheLionessQueen.com.
Yeah. Has the Lioness Queen, has it been around for a while now?
I started in February.
In February? I've seen that before though. Like when I saw your podcast, your art, and then when you sent me a message on Facebook, because you have like a yellow coat on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was yellow. But I seen it
from Mother's Day.
You said what now?
That was from Mother's Day.
Mother's Day?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that sounds so familiar. Have you been on a lot of podcasts besides this one?
I've been on a lot of podcasts.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you've been on some podcasts I listened to before. You're out there. You don't even know it.
Praise God.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help with my sisters. That's what I'm trying to do. Like
that's good.
I just want us to be whole. I want us to be I want the next relationship not to suffer.
Right.
You know, that's what I want. I want them not to suffer. And unfortunately, a lot of, I hate to say it, the men do because of our baggage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's residue free.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the Black community real quick too. We're learning now. It seems like within the past few years, we're just now learning to start to uplift one another. Because, you know, we had the residue always want to tear each other down. But now it's like, hey, we need to push, like we kept talking about doing this podcast, pushing forward. And people like you, people like us that's setting these platforms for other people to do like better yourselves and stuff like that. I really appreciate things like that these days.
Well, I think the biggest piece is we got to stop being competitive. The only person we're competing against is ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, you're not competing against anybody else. Unless it's Oprah, you ain't doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, you're not. And so God gave all of us gifts, talents, skills, abilities, you know, where you can be, and we can be where Oprah is. You know what I mean? Like, there's room for everybody. There's a seat at the table for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, but you gotta want it, and don't look down on the other person who put in the work to get at the table. That's the piece. We gotta stop being competitive because it's about all of us getting to the table.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And where do you preach at? The name of your church?
Cornerstone Peaceful Bible Baptist Church.
Okay, and that's in Maryland.
That is in Maryland. Yes.
All right.
So my pastor is Pastor Daniel and Sabrina Mangrum, who they are the reason I am who I am. I'm telling you, they just have a love for people, and that is one of the reasons why I do. You know, you just have to have a love for people, and they're transparent. That's the other piece. Like, we have to, you know, let our mask down. It's okay to show your flaws. God loves your flaws. Show them. It's okay. Right. We're human. You know what I mean? Like, God didn't create us to be superhuman. He created us human, you know, and it's okay. Yeah.
I love that. I love hearing when people, especially people like pastors, are transparent, because there's a lot of pastors in there that have that bad stigma of because they have to stand in front of a congregation every Sunday, they have to look perfect. But your Congress isn't perfect. So, or not your Congress, your congregation isn't even perfect. So why do you have to have this perfect image? You're not God. You're a spokesman for them, but you're not, they won't even say a spokesman, but you're not God. So you're not perfect. So, all right. Wait, did that come off negative?
No.
Oh, okay. You got right.
What you said, this is what you said. Stop putting yourself on a pedestal.
Basically. Because some people let that go to their heads, and I've seen it. I've been to a few churches like that. But yeah.
And then it turns people away.
It can, it can.
People away. And so, like, there's a scripture that you can be so spiritually minded that you're no earthly good. You know, how can I show? That's the one thing in John Lewis's tribute, like this man showed God's love, and he wasn't out there preaching Jesus, Lord, God. He was just showing it by action.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That's how you do it. You show it by action, because sometimes the people you're trying to reach may not know much about scriptures or you know what I mean? They might not. Yeah. And so we got to show it with our action. And so if we want to move forward, especially with Black Lives Matter, we gotta love each other.
Right.
Like that's the biggest piece, because I think when we start to love each other, then we will be a force to be reckoned with. Yeah.
We gotta show them how we want to be treated. Then they will treat us as such. But if we sit here tearing ourselves down, what can we expect for them to do to us, you know? All right. Ravi, you got anything that you want to add?
So I just want to say that I commend you. It's very admirable that while you were going through what you were going through, you trusted the vision. Like you said, God spoke to you, and to be going through it and then to also say, okay, I see the vision and I trust, you know, what you have for me. I think that is A1, because there are a lot of women that are like stuck in like the situation you explained, feeling like they have a roommate, someone that, oh, I didn't want to be married. And then you leave that because God told you something and you had that confidence in God. And so you were rewarded. You had someone who wanted to love you intentionally. And so I just think that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to help my sisters. I gotta help my sisters. I got to. I like, I have friends who, you know, I see it. You know what I mean? But again, you gotta want to change. You can't. Mm-hmm. You gotta want to. You. It's all about letting go of yourself and embracing whatever God is trying to do in your life. And a lot of people are scared of the unknown and what's new. You know.
All right. All right, Dr. Stewart, anything you want to add? Reverend Stewart, Dr. Stewart? 3?
Yes, 3, that's me. Yeah, so I would say 1, thank you so much for being on your podcast. This is really, I love the therapeutic part, because I truly believe we all need something to help build us up sometimes. Whether it is to renew our mind, our spirit, you know, we all need that. And that is how we survive, because life is life. And you need something to kind of give yourself a space to embrace whatever's going on, to embrace the journey, and to embrace whatever God is doing in your life, you know. And so that is therapeutic.
Right. Okay. All right. So you gave your information for your podcast. Any other information that you want to put out there before we close it?
I also have a women's empowerment session I do monthly. Okay. We just had one last month. And so we talk about different topics. Last month, it was about emotional scars. And then I also love, I just started showcasing female businesses as well. Okay. And then we play games. And so awesome. Trying to kind of give it a little balance. You know, it's not preaching. It's not, you know, and then sometimes the guests can kind of interject, you know, and their thoughts and ideas. And so it's very engaging. And so that's something else that I enjoy doing. And I have a co-host, my best girlfriend.
Okay. That's awesome. All right. So this has been another episode of the Public Therapy Podcast. Your host, Chris.
I'm right.
All right. And today we had with us Dr. Stewart. Thank you for coming or joining. All right, y'all.